Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining me today on Game Day, Births Not Balls. My name is Micah Burgess, and I'm a birth doula in Waco, Texas. And today I have a follow-up on a follow-up on a follow-up. So the episode that I did right before this, we talked a little bit about C-section. And I talked about all the different things that maybe a first-time parent doesn't know if you end up having to have a C-section. And then I also did a podcast episode, Who's Your Daddy? And where I interviewed 3 dads. 2 dads were clients of mine, of Waco doulas. And one of the dads in the room, his wife was pregnant. They had hired Waco doula, but they had not had their baby yet. And today I have Lauren and Jonathon Olivarez in the studio with me. And I am so glad that they're here. Say hello to everybody.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Okay, y'all introduce yourselves. Tell everybody a little bit about yourselves.
Well, we're really excited to be here today.
Good.
I am an attorney at Beard, Colgin, Brophy, Bostwick, and Dixon. I've been practicing for 6 years now, and I'm from the Waco area. I grew up in Hewitt and met John, and we just love living in Waco and being in town with everybody and all our family.
Yeah. And I'm an advising specialist at MCC, and we this is, like Micah said, this is our first child, and so we're just kind of going through the journey little by little and enjoying every minute of it. So
I'm so glad. So we're going to take a real quick listen to part of our interview, the interview that I did with the dads, and because we're going to connect some dots here for you guys. So take a quick listen. So John, when you hear these 2 birth experiences, what are some of the thoughts that maybe come up in your mind?
I think just the big difference between them and the the fact that both of them had that end result, or that happy end result, and everything, and just how different it can be, and it is not probably going to look exactly how you plan it on the day, but you have enough things that you have planned for that you can kind of roll with things. And so that's kind of what that says to me is just be flexible and trust in all the things, the classes that you've done ahead of time, the preparation you've done ahead of time, and things will flow as it's supposed to flow. So.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. So what is a question that's been lurking in your mind, John, that you would like to ask?
We want it to go one way, and then just hoping that it's going to go the way that we're planning for and preparing for. But there's always that thing. And, part of the reason I think, like Cameron mentioned, is, with pregnancy, it's one of the, normally I'm the same way. I don't think in the worst case scenarios, but I think when it's something that's not your body going through it, you have to be kind of a passive observer and not just an observer, but a help there. Right. But it's certainly, you don't have as much right there in the moment. And so just trying to figure out where you can help out and figure out how you can be there and a resource in that moment. So
right. Yeah. Absolutely. Okay, so I'm not sure what kind of thoughts are going through your head, John, as you hear what you just said about, possibly thinking about worst case scenario, because you don't really know what's going to happen. What if something does go wrong? And so let's segue into, you guys jump in and together, as best you can, tell everybody about your birth experience.
In our experience, with our experience, it ended up being different than we expected, but it ended up great nonetheless. And I'll let my wife kind of walk through kind of our process leading up and then the day of, and then we can kind of go over that.
Great.
I had originally hoped to have a unmedicated vaginal birth, which is one of the reasons why we were so excited to work with Waco doulas. I'd also done some birth prep classes through Hypnobabies, but I ended up having gestational diabetes. It was a risk factor for not being able to have the kind of birth that I'd hoped for. And then my buddy man was also breached the entire pregnancy. And so
Stinker.
I know. He is very sassy. He's very sassy.
I love that.
Yeah. So we had, I'd hoped for this experience of, this vaginal birth. And we didn't get to have that. My amniotic fluid was low also, so it just was a kind of culmination of a bunch of different factors, and we ended up scheduling a C-section, which I kind of came to terms with. My doctor said this is the safest thing for y'all to do. I'd planned to, work up until the day that I had my C-section, and then my water broke a week before my scheduled C-section.
Yes, which you knew and were vehemently trying to convince the nursing staff. Yeah, pretty sure I didn't pee. I'm pretty sure my water broke. Do y'all remember that in the triage?
Yes.
Like it took 4 tests or something stupid like that. It was unbelievable.
They
anyway.
ran a bunch of tests, and I was like, no, I promise you, I know that this was not urine.
Yeah, so water broke.
Water broke. I knew my water broke, and we went to the hospital, and after checking my amniotic fluid levels, Dr. Waite said, you're too low to wait. So we're going to have an urgent C-section. So I'd already knew that I was going to most likely have a C-section. But it was hard to come to terms with that because it's not really what I had wanted to do.
Right. And then now another curveball. Water breaks a week early. Now you got to adjust again.
Yes.
Yeah. We were fortunate that with it being a week early, we had planned the scheduled C-section was with our doctor that we had worked with the whole time, and we knew that if anything happened early, it was just going to be luck of the draw, whichever doctor was on call. But luckily, our doctor was on call that day, so it worked out well on that end because we got to work with the doctor who we had been working with the whole time, and she got to deliver, read, and so that was a good thing too.
I feel like my pregnancy and my delivery, the C-section itself went smoothly. No complications. The recovery has not been bad. But my pregnancy and my water breaking, I feel like was just kind of a masterclass in planning one thing happening and then something else completely abnormal. Or not abnormal, but unexpected happens.
Unexpected. Yeah. And, that is just like we heard in the podcast, John, that you were a part of with Who's Your Daddy. That is, for the most part, new parents' biggest concern. What happens if it doesn't go the way that I want it to go, the way that I planned? And I'm going to, spoiler alert, you guys, there will probably be at least one thing within your birth plan that doesn't go exactly the way you hoped or thought it would go. But when babies breach and your body dictates fluid's too low, we got to shift. We got to change plans. And I'm going to tell you guys, I was a witness to this couple. They were absolute champs when it came to adjusting.
Our experience was wonderful, even though it wasn't what we'd planned.
And that is something I really want people to get.
Yeah.
I mean, as a birth doula, that's unusual for me to be promoting a birth other than an all-natural vaginal delivery.
Right.
Because most doulas are adamant about it. And that is like the only way. And but for me, we're really doing families a disservice because now you're going to feel what?
I'm going to feel bad.
You're going to feel bad.
Yeah.
Well, how's that helpful?
It's not.
It's not helpful. Yeah. And so I'm really hoping that more and more people can hear and will start to shift to this. I think the fear is that it's going to go back to this all medical way of doing it, but it's not.
No.
People are too educated now. People want a more natural experience.
Yeah.
I don't think we're going backwards by helping people be okay with the birth scenario that's in front of them.
Right. Like it was medically necessary for me to have a C-section.
Necessary. Absolutely.
And if it hadn't been medically necessary, then I wouldn't have had to do it.
Right. Yeah. And we see a lot of clients that are babies are breech, and they are absolutely stressed almost the whole time because they've already drawn that line. No, I will not have a C-section. And I don't think there's anything wrong with trying things like spinning babies while you're pregnant.
Like we tried.
To help get baby to turn. I think that's great. Or an inversion. Hey, let's see if we can try to.
And we were going to try that.
And y'all were going to do that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But just not enough amniotic fluid.
Yeah.
So.
Exactly. And that's huge. You have to. It won't work.
No.
And they'll kill you.
Yeah. And it's so
you don't
painful.
have enough fluid.
Yeah.
I'm telling you guys, I was so impressed with how you were handling what was thrown at you. And I think a lot of that is because, and even John spoke to it a little bit in the podcast earlier, you guys were prepared. There were several things that y'all were doing beforehand. And then once baby was born, you had some things lined up even before you had the baby that were going to be aids in helping you in the postpartum process. So I want to dive into that. I would like for y'all to, if you can, recall as many of those things that you guys did to help prepare yourselves for, hey, there may be a shift. Hey, this may not work the way we want it to. What can we do to help ourselves get through the process?
Yeah. I think, and I agree with you. Certainly the preparation is really what kind of helped us deal with the curveballs and the things when they didn't kind of work out exactly how we wanted. And I think it started with, obviously conversation between ourselves as we're, working to get pregnant and just kind of planning, once we were pregnant, just between ourselves, but then kind of those conversations shifting to talking with family members, talking with friends who had recently experienced birth. So those were kind of the starter points. And then we kind of delved into some professional level resources. And then do you want to kind of highlight those resources?
Yeah. So we had a friend who used hypnobabies and she used Waco doulas. Mm-hmm. And she had a unmedicated vaginal birth, and it was a great birth experience for her. And I trusted her, and I was like, oh, hypnobabies, that sounds really cool. And it basically really helped me with stress levels. I'm very type A, and so I want to control things. And it kind of let me have some time in the evening to let go of the stress and just breathe.
Yeah.
So that was helpful. And then hiring Waco doulas was hugely helpful, knowing that whatever our path was, that we would have someone who'd been at a lot of births before and seen the gamut of, okay, if we need an emergency C-section, they've done that. If we need whatever we needed, we figured that y'all had likely had that something like it happen before.
Probably, yes.
Yeah. And then a huge resource for us has been Compleo Kids.
Awesome.
Yeah. So
they're so great.
They have a package that is a visit with a pediatric PT, a visit with a international board certified lactation consultant, and a pelvic floor physical therapist.
Oh yes, Compleo. They are amazing. In fact, they were here for a podcast episode as well, and that episode is called "Getting Help is the New Norm." So hey, there's another follow-up to a follow-up.
Having those resources and meeting them before Reed was here was really important, so that we'd already established a relationship with them.
Yes,
and then
so
we
important.
could say, here are the things that we're concerned about. Like with breastfeeding, I wanted to breastfeed, but I had gestational diabetes, which can impact whether your milk comes in, right after birth. Also, with a C-section, that can impact when your milk comes in. And so Lauren Sams, the lactation consultant, had said, hey, be aware with gestational diabetes and with a C-section, you may need to supplement with formula. Okay. So a lot of the things were
so great
heads up so that when something did happen that we weren't expecting, I could say, oh, I knew that this was a possibility.
And that what you're talking about right now is a huge, huge thing that we focus on. And that is your mental game, the mental support. And while some people may say, and I'm so glad you don't feel this way, but the truth is your physical body, Lauren, did not do what you thought it was going to do, right? It did not. No. And so many people are like, oh, I failed. What's wrong with me? Okay, so that's not true. First of all, you
not true.
Did not fail whatsoever. I mean, this is life, y'all. None of us can plan these things. I mean, we roll with what we can roll with. But what my point is that even though your physical body did not do exactly what you thought it was going to do, as prepared as you were, your mental preparation and your mental game is what got you through. Absolutely. To have a birth experience that when you look back at it, what are your thoughts? When you look back at your birth experience, are you like, oh, damn it, didn't get the birth I wanted?
No, absolutely not. I'm so proud. I'm really proud of, like, the gestational diabetes, for example. That was a very unexpected diagnosis for me. I eat really healthily. I am in pretty good shape. I was running through week like 25 of my pregnancy.
Wow.
And I got my blood test back, and it was borderline. Anyways, I ended up taking insulin.
Wow.
And I worked really hard at the dietary restrictions. I took my blood tests 4 times a day. And when my OB delivered my baby and told me that he was not, because one of the risk factors with gestational diabetes is that your baby is too big.
Yeah.
And he was under 7 pounds.
Yeah.
And she was like, you should be so proud.
Good.
And just knowing that I had worked as hard as I could to do what I could to have a healthy baby and to prepare myself to have him. And then knowing that I made decisions that John and I made decisions that were going to be the best for him.
Yeah.
Like,
Absolutely.
I didn't want to have a C-section, but that was the easiest decision I've probably ever made because that was what he needed.
Oh my gosh, I love that. And if you're listening to this, if you are a new parent, and especially if you're expecting and your big fear is, oh my gosh, what if I have to have a C-section? Listen, I get it. Nobody wants to have major surgery.
No,
nobody wants that. That's a given, right? But if you can hear what Lauren and John are trying to say is, yeah, but in the big scheme of things, it's not a big deal. Easiest decision I've ever made because that's what my baby needed.
Yeah. And that, I think, is the baseline. If you can keep in your head at the base of all of the decisions that you make about your pregnancy and about what your birth plan hopes are and about your delivery is that what I'm doing is trying to make the best decision for my baby.
Absolutely.
Then I think that's really a helpful way to kind of keep yourself in check and keep your hope, so if your hopes are not met, then you don't just collapse and say, oh man, I was disappointed.
Of course.
But
disappointed is different than despair.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very different.
Yes.
Yeah. And even after the birth, the day of birth, there were still things that came up, after birth that, weren't as we planned or weren't things that were necessarily what we were thinking was going to happen. Reed had some struggles with some breastfeeding because he had some tongue tie issues.
Yeah.
And so, that was something that we learned more about after his birth and, in those first few days, and we connected fairly quickly. First of all, in the hospital, we had a great nurse who was kind of walking us through some different options to supplement while he was figuring out breastfeeding, while we were figuring out how his tongue tie issue kind of factored into helping him latch and those things. So we had a plan after we left the hospital to try to help him get as much food and nutrition as possible. And then we started connecting with pediatric dentists to work on the tongue tie issue. And we were able to get that taken care of early in his life. And we were running into parents at in the waiting room who, their child hadn't gotten their tongue tie taken care of until, months down the road. Wow. Sometimes children don't get it until like after a year or 2 years. So, us being able to get connected early on and have that early intervention really helped Reed, and he has no lasting impact from it, speech or otherwise from his tongue tie early. And so again, that was just the preparation ahead of time, but then that wasn't something that was necessarily on a radar. So then it was just preparation in the moment and talking with friends who had similar experiences, and then just reaching out to various networks, who helped us connect with another resource. So.
But also that was huge because we would not have realized he had a tongue tie except the lactation consultant said, hey, you need to get this checked out.
So great.
Yeah. So already having the relationship and saying, then we weren't in the dark about it.
Yeah.
They were able to say, you need to get this checked out. Here are some options for people you can go see about it.
Yeah. And I think sometimes the stigma of seeing a specialist or going to figure out what potentially could be wrong can sometimes make parents feel, again, I've failed. What's wrong with me? What's wrong with my baby? And that honestly can keep people from going to get help, from even getting a consult. Like the stigma of that, I had to see a specialist. For some reason, hopefully that's changing now more and more and more. And I think it's super important. And so I'll just ask the very blunt question. Do you guys feel like, this was, everything went wrong, or there is something wrong, or were you hesitant or feel strange, like seeing a specialist or looking into that?
No.
So glad.
We just saw it as another opportunity of connecting with someone who had more knowledge than us.
Exactly.
In their field, in their area. First of all, we're first-time parents, so any parent is going to have more knowledge, but then also than the professionals in their arenas, in their individual arenas, and we have found that a million times along the way with Reed, and I'm sure we'll continue to find that. And he just benefits from it because it's again increasing our support network, increasing the host of people that we can ask questions to, that we can feel supported from. And so it's been a great experience along the way, even with the things that we didn't plan. We wouldn't change anything about it because it's really helped us learn. It's benefited Reed in so many different ways. So
good. And what I'm hoping the listeners today are hearing from you guys is the peace on you right now because of the choices that you've made to allow people to come into your space, to allow, to not be so protective, to not care what people may potentially think about the fact that, who cares? You said it, John. This benefits Reed.
Yes. This
benefits our child. And that is what parenting is all about. And you start when you're pregnant.
Yes.
That is when parenting starts. And it is about what's best for him, not what is the most convenient for us. Oh my gosh, I cannot go once a week to a PT. Like that's just not in the cards. I can't do that. Okay. Then maybe you can find somebody that can.
Yeah.
Or at least go get a consult. Maybe you won't have to go every week. But to not pursue avenues when maybe your gut tells you, or, you know what, I don't really know, let's go see. Then you could potentially, like you guys said, be putting something off and making it potentially worse.
Yes.
Rather than just biting the bullet, go for it. What's it going to hurt?
Yeah. Well, and for example, Reed, because he was breached, the way he was positioned, he had a big flat spot on the back of his head.
Yeah, very common.
Very common. But his was pretty flat, and we would not have even seen it. I would not have processed that he had a flat spot because he's my baby and he's perfect.
Right. Yes.
Except we were seeing the pediatric PT, and she was able to say, hey, he's got this big flat spot.
Yeah.
When you lay him down in the crib, make sure his head's turned the other direction.
Yes. I mean, so simple.
So simple. And we've avoided, he's not going to need a helmet. He's not going to need any intervention because we were able to get that advice from the PT.
So great.
Yeah.
Y'all, this has been so helpful, so informative. This might be one of my more informative episodes because the whole point of me doing this is I want to help as many people as possible, as many new parents as possible. I want to expose as many things as I can. I want people to know what their options are. I want you to hear positive birth experiences, and that includes gestational diabetes, C-section, breech, flathead, tongue-tied. It includes all of that. That can be a positive experience too.
It is.
That's so nuts.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping to change the narrative and the conversation about how we view all of that. Because I think most of the time people think positive birth experience, positive pregnancy experience, whatever, everything that surrounds that means it's perfect. And that it went exactly the way we thought it was going to go.
No.
Not true.
Not true.
Right.
And we just debunked that myth. I love it. I'm so happy. Okay, before we close this episode, tell me 2 or 3 things about Reed. How old is he now?
He's 6 months.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah. All right, tell me 2 or 3 things about him that would just give me this instant picture of what he's like right now and how much you guys are enjoying him.
Oh my gosh. Well, one of the things that I think is hilarious, he has a little bouncy chair.
Okay.
And he has learned how to make it bounce himself, and he will just arch his back just so much, and then he will lean back really fast to make it bounce, and he gets so excited, and he'll just move his little head around.
I love that.
He loves petting our dog.
Yeah, he's in the last, probably 2 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, he started shifting from he would notice, Poppy, our dog, but he's kind of shifted to seeing. You can see it in his eyes where he sees her on a different level, and we'll put him close enough to her, and she's been really great with him.
Sure.
But he'll reach out to kind of pet her, and we're teaching him how to pet her gently, and his eyes kind of sparkle when he does that. Aww. And he enjoys it. She's still a little iffy on it, but she'll grow into it.
She'll train him. No worries.
Yeah.
She'll be gentle, but she'll train him.
Yeah, she'll train him. That's exactly right.
And he's very animated. He's really laughing a lot now, right now, and just when he giggles, when he kind of gets into giggling, it's really great to see him just enjoying life and just soaking it in. He is constantly looking around now, and we're trying to keep him from looking at screens as much, but he is exploring his world so much, and so it's really great to see.
I love it. I'm so proud of you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I really am.
I'm
Really
proud of myself. I'm proud of
Should
John.
be.
Yeah,
Absolutely should be. Absolutely should be. Thank y'all for making the time to be with me today.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
Hey, thanks for joining me on Game Day, Birds Not Balls. You can follow me on my Instagram page at MyDoulaMicah. You can also find me on WacoDoula.com. Waco Doula is on Facebook. And if you like what you heard, you can subscribe, or you can find us on RogueMediaNetwork.com. Thanks for joining us.
This has been a Rogue Media podcast.